Hello, and welcome back to MC310. This week, we are learning about color. Color is always a really fun part of design and layout, and yet it can also be a very tricky part of how you know how to put things together. So, this video, we're going to go over some definitions of color and learn the basics of color theory. Color is very powerful within design. In fact, it's probably one of the most powerful design elements that we use. Color can really attract the audience's eye and it can make your audience feel things thanks to the psychology of color. Our brains react to color in different ways. And with social and cultural interpretations of color, we often get senses or moods about something just based on its color alone. For instance, if you saw an advertisement in Western culture that was entirely pink, you might think that it was a more feminine product. Where if you had an advertisement that was in a dark blue, you might think it's more masculine. That's not true in all cultures. And in fact, even in Western culture, we are shifting those norms, but the power of color and their meaning still remains. So let's do a quick review of what all the colors and their different meanings or feelings are for basic design.
Okay, now that you've learned how to pair colors with one another, let's look into the meanings of individual colors. After all, a color can have a positive or a negative connotation, so you want to ensure that you're choosing the right color for your audience. Yellow. I'd say it's a good place to start. It's the color of the sun, bananas, and the unforgettable smiley face. The color is typically associated with creativity, optimism, and liveliness as long as there isn't too much shade thrown in. You can see the colors in this graphic here. The bright yellows make you feel good, while those darker shades almost make you feel sick. Yellow is inviting, and it's a big reason why McDonald's features the color on their world-famous golden arches. Red. It's my favorite color, maybe because it's the first color that we all see as babies, or maybe it's because of the desire for more power and importance, given that's what it embodies. Red is memorable and transcendent. Many marketers use red for their call to action buttons, and rightfully so. People notice red. It's a big reason why stop signs bear the color. The tricky part with red is the number of connotations that are paired with it. Red can be either positive or negative, which is why it is key to clarify its intent with words alongside the color. Blue is another color that emits a wide range of emotions. For one person, it symbolizes intelligence and a sense of calmness. For the other person, it's cold and sad. You'll often stumble upon blues used by corporate and technology websites or hospitals, not just to symbolize intelligence, but trust as well. Also, fun fact, blue is the most preferred color by all consumers. Maybe something to keep in mind. When it comes to pop, there may be no better color than orange. Its vibrance is both creative and inviting. You want to use brighter oranges for elements that you want to stand out. And if you're looking for a good background, a shaded orange could work to provide a sense of warmth for a viewer. Often, when we need a break, we might step outside or go for a walk. This very well could be because of the green trees and nature around us that provide a sense of refreshment and serenity. Can you name one eco-friendly company that doesn't use the color green? Color psychology has essentially created a rule through the term going green, and it's now recognizable everywhere. Violet, a character from the Willy Wonka movies and also a color which symbolizes royalty. It's majestic, noble, and lavish. Not to mention, it's also termed to be very pretty. It provides a sense of truthfulness and wisdom. It's also a crowd favorite among many female consumers. Unless your graphic is intended to be spiritual or regal, use violet sparingly.
Unless, of course, you are advertising for the University of Montevallo.
Now, while violet has long been marketed for women, so has pink. It's a color of happiness and positivity. I mean, have you ever been angry when you saw pink cotton candy? I haven't. And while pink is often associated with feminine products, it can be gender neutral as well. Just be careful and make sure you do your research. If you're selling a hammer, pink might not be your best option. White is a color that we see all around us. It's the primary color for paper and the walls in our homes or offices. That might be because it symbolizes cleanliness and clarity. You won't find many graphics without at least a touch of white. If so, I'm willing to bet that the graphic leaves you feeling overwhelmed. White is one color that can be used to cover nearly an entire image. After all, the term white space is all about leaving some room on a graphic blank so a viewer isn't confused. Black is a color of elegance and formality. You want a sleek look? Use black. It's why our phones and cars are often the color. Black is a great background color as well, so long as it's paired with vibrant colors in the foreground. Brown is similar to green in that it provides a sense of all natural. It's a supporting color that needs to be just right. One shade of brown can look clean, while the other appears dirty. Think paper bags. They're a big part of that going green trend that I mentioned earlier, but the tint must be just light enough to make it feel clean, not dirty. And lastly, gold, silver, and bronze all fall under metallic colors. Yes, technically these are color pigments with metallic powder mixed in, which is why they're difficult to use on screen and on paper. However, if you're striving for a glamorous look, talk to your printing agent to see how they can help you achieve that perfect metallic.
So those are some of the basic meanings in color psychology. But like I said, depending upon what time period you're in, or even what culture you're in, it's important to remember that color doesn't mean the same thing to everyone. So be sure that you use your cultural intelligence and the diversity of your team in order to understand the significance of color. For instance, if you were advertising for wedding dresses, in cultures that have Hindu religion, white is actually used for mourning and would be seen as a faux pas for a wedding. Instead, brides in Hindu culture typically wear red for fertility and prosperity. So again, it's really important that we remain culturally aware when we are designing, not only for color, but all aspects of our design. Now, when we're talking about types of color, there are two primary types of color in design work: CMYK, which is used for printing, and RGB, which is used for digital. Now, with CMYK, it's very reflective of how we see color when we are in our natural world. Scientifically, we see color in our eyes when wavelengths of light bounce off of an object, and some of the wavelengths are absorbed into the object while others bounce back. And the color of the wavelength that bounces back is what we're really seeing. This is similar to how printers use CMYK, which is known as a subtractive method of mixing. It's used primarily for printing. So if you've ever had to refill a printer cartridge, you may know that it has 4 different slots for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, which is what the K stands for. The more color you add in CMYK, the darker the new color is. So it assumes that your background or the paper is white, and then all 3 colors, if they were combined together, would make up the color black. Now, one common method of printing is through what's called Pantone Color, and there's really a whole culture of Pantone colors. It's very popular on social media, but Pantone Color essentially is a standardized color matching system so that different manufacturers around the world can all reference a specific Pantone number and make sure that their colors match for something. I only mention this because it is so popular, but this is not necessarily something specific to design. Now, in terms of another type of color designation, RGB is what we use for digital color. This is known as emitting light rather than absorbing light. So it's an additive rather than a subtractive form of color. These three colors use red, green, and blue to make the new color. And the more colors you add, the brighter the new color is. So it's the exact opposite of CMYK. Now, it assumes that your screen, your digital screen, is black. So all three colors combine to make white. So again, think of RGB as the opposite of printing color because you are starting with a black computer screen rather than a white one. Now, when we use digital color, we also get what are called hex codes, and I'll show you these in the second video. But these are a 6-digit code that is preceded by a hashtag, and it's made up of the colors for red, green, and blue. So there are 2 colors for red, 2 for green, 2 for blue. And again, just like the Pantone colors for printing, a hex code helps designers have all of the same colors digitally. Now let's work out some color terms now that we understand the 2 forms of color, both for printing and digital. The first color term you need to know is hue. This is a named color like red, blue, green. These are separate colors of the spectrum and they're distinguished by their wavelength. So the hue is the most natural of the shades. The tint is a lighter shade of a hue made by adding white. So you can see in the picture, it's a lot lighter than the hue itself. The shade is a darker shade of a hue by adding black. So when we're shading something, we are making it darker. A tone is a muted shade of a hue by adding gray. So you have a hue, which is the natural color, tint, which is lighter, shade, which is darker, and tone, which is muted. A couple of other terms that you need to know, and these are also in your textbook reading, are saturation, which is scale from fully intense, as in a bright red, to low intensity to a dark green. So saturation tells you just the intensity of the color. The tonal value are specific qualities of a hue, including its evenness, brightness, or depth. And the important thing to remember is the tonal value will remain when it's converted to black and white. The value is still preserved. So that's how we get grayscale, because we have the tonal value of evenness, brightness, and depth of the hue, even if color is removed. Halftone is when we use different size dots to create tones of gray. This is also known as grayscale. And duotone is when you use a hue plus black or 2 tints of the same hue in order to design something. So here is a saturation key. It shows you that when it is pure and bright, it will appear much more intense. And then the lower the saturation, the more white it appears or less intense. Same for the brightness. It's going to have the value is going to be bright, medium, or dark. Some other color terms to know are color temperature. Color temperature ranges from warm to cool. Warm tones are considered in the red, orange, and yellow families. And then cool tones are in the blue, green, and purple families. But even an individual color can have warm to cool shades. So you can see, for example, if we had warm light versus cool light, the warm light would have shades of red or orange in it, while the cool light has shades of blue, purple, and other dark colors. So even if you're lighting for videography, for instance, someone may tell you to use a warm light. That means that you're supposed to use one that's a little more yellowed as opposed to very bright white. Now, this is the color wheel, and it really forms the basis for all of color theory. A color wheel is one of the major ways that we know how colors interact with one another. The color wheel starts with three different types of color. The first is primary colors. If you remember from elementary school, your primary colors are red, blue, and yellow. These are known as the primary colors, and you cannot mix, colors to get these colors. The secondary colors on the color wheel are green, orange, and purple. So if you take the primary colors and mix them, you will get the secondary colors. So, for instance, blue and yellow make green, blue and red make purple, and red and yellow make orange. Then we have what are known as tertiary colors. And tertiary colors are those that take a primary color and mix it with a secondary color. So, yellow and green combine to make light green. Yellow and orange combine to make light orange. Uh, Orange and red combine to make red orange. Red and purple combine to make pink or violet, or excuse me, magenta. Violet and blue combine to make dark blue or navy, and blue and green make teal. So you can see that these are how the color wheel is formed. And then here is how you can use them.
So how do we use all these colours together? We can use our 12 basic hues on the colour wheel, along with some easy to follow formulas to create an endless collection of colour combinations that look balanced, appealing, and just work. These formulas are known as colour harmonies. The first and easiest is a monochromatic colour harmony. This takes just one base colour or hue from our wheel and uses different shades, tones, or tints to create a group of colours. It's one of the easiest colour harmonies to create and looks simple, cohesive, and organised. Next, we have a complementary colour scheme. This takes two colours from opposite sides of the colour wheel, such as red and green or blue and orange. This type of colour scheme is great for creating strong contrast in your image. A split complementary colour scheme is similar to a complementary colour scheme, except one of the colours is split into two nearby colours. This keeps the high contrast of the complementary colour scheme, but also adds more variety. A triadic colour scheme uses three colours that are evenly spaced around the colour wheel like a triangle. These colour combinations are often bold and vibrant. Tetradic colours are four colours in a rectangle shape, made up of two sets of complementary colours together as one palette. These palettes work best when you focus on one main colour and use the other colours as contrasting accents. An analogous colour scheme uses 2 to 4 colours that are next to each other on the colour wheel. This is one of the simplest and most appealing colour harmonies and works best.
So those are the different
So how
types of ways to use color in your design. So we're going to go a little bit more in depth with color theory and how to use colors in design in our next video. So make sure you watch it. Then you can participate in discussion number 3 on color, and then read the chapters on visuals, parts 1 and 2. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Otherwise, I'll see you in video 2.